The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty settlement of New Meridian, where the last remnants of Earth's colonial expansion had carved out a harsh existence on the frontier world of Kepler 442b. The air tasted of metal and distant storms, and the red soil crunched under worn boots as the day began. Zara crouched behind a pile of discarded mining equipment, her pale blue skin almost translucent in the harsh light. Her species, the HFY, were not built for desert worlds. Every breath felt like swallowing glass, and her throat burned with a thirst that had plagued her for 3 days now. The delicate gill slits along her neck, meant to filter moisture from humid air, only served to leak what little water remained in her system. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows as voices approached, the same voices that had haunted her for weeks. "Look what we have here," came the familiar sneer of Marcus Chun, the settlement's self-appointed leader of the youth gangs. His father owned the largest water reclamation plant in the sector, which made Marcus think he owned the water itself. "If it isn't our little fish girl." 3 other teenagers flanked him: Sarah, Jin, and the massive bulk of Tommy Morrison. They had found her again, despite her best efforts to hide. Her large, dark eyes darted left and right, looking for escape routes, but they had positioned themselves well. "Please," Zara whispered, her voice barely audible. The words came out in broken standard, the common language of the colonies. "I just need small water. Very small." Marcus laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "Water? You know the rules, fish girl. Water costs credits. What have you got to trade?" Zara's hands trembled as she reached into the small pouch at her side. She pulled out a crystalline device no bigger than her thumb, a piece of HFY technology that could purify any liquid into clean, drinkable water. It was the last thing she had from her homeworld, the only memento of her family. "This," she said, holding it out with shaking fingers. "Very valuable. Trade for water?" Sarah snatched the device from her hands, examining it with greedy eyes. "What's it do?" "Makes dirty water clean," Zara explained desperately. "Very rare. Very precious to my people." Marcus grabbed the purifier and held it up to the light. Even he could see the alien craftsmanship, the way it seemed to bend light around itself. This was worth more than a year's water rations. "Yeah, this is nice," he said with a cruel grin. "But it's not enough. Water's expensive, and you're just another alien mouth to feed. Tell you what, get on your knees and beg properly, and maybe I'll consider selling you a sip." The words hit Zara like a physical blow. She had been a respected engineer on her homeworld, part of a proud civilization that had mastered water cultivation across a dozen star systems. Now she was being asked to grovel in the dust for basic survival, but thirst was a terrible master. Slowly, painfully, Zara lowered herself to her knees in the red dirt. The coarse soil bit through her thin clothing, and she could feel her dignity bleeding away with each passing second. "Please," she whispered again, her head bowed. "I beg you. Just small water. I will die without." Marcus pulled out a small plastic bottle, half filled with murky liquid that might have once been clean. He held it high above her head, just out of reach. "Louder," he commanded. "I want the whole settlement to hear you." From his workshop 3 blocks away, Jake Morrison could hear the commotion. The 28-year-old engineer was Tommy's older brother, but unlike his sibling, Jake had inherited their grandmother's sense of right and wrong. Instead of their father's bitter prejudices, Jake set down his plasma torch and wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had been trying to fix the atmospheric processor that kept the settlement's air breathable, but the sounds from outside were becoming impossible to ignore. He recognized his brother's voice. Along with Marcus and the others, they were picking on someone again. Jake grabbed his tool belt and headed for the door. As the settlement's chief engineer, he had responsibilities beyond just keeping the machines running. Someone had to look out for those who couldn't, protect themselves. When he rounded the corner and saw the scene unfolding in the alley, his heart sank. The alien girl he had seen her around but never spoke to her was on her knees in the dirt, while 4 teenagers tormented her. The desperation in her posture told him everything he needed to know about how long this had been going on. "That's enough," Jake called out. his voice carrying the authority of someone who had spent years dealing with dangerous situations. "Tommy, get away from her, now." Tommy's head snapped around, and his face paled when he saw his older brother approaching. The other three teenagers suddenly found the ground very interesting to look at. "Jake, I saw what you were doing," Jake cut him off. His eyes moved from face to face, memorizing who had been involved. "Sarah, Jin, Marcus, your parents are going to hear about this. Tommy, go home. We'll talk later." As the bullies scattered like insects exposed to light, Jake knelt down beside Zara. Up close, he could see the toll the desert world was taking on her. Her skin had a grayish tint that spoke of severe dehydration, and her breathing was shallow and rapid. "Hey," he said softly, his voice gentle now. "Are you okay?" Zara looked up at him with eyes that held too much pain for someone who couldn't be more than 20 in human years. She tried to speak but only managed a weak croak. Jake immediately understood. Without hesitation, he pulled the emergency water bottle from his belt and held it out to her. "Here, drink." But instead of grabbing it desperately as he expected, Zara shrank back. Her eyes darted between the bottle and his face, confusion and fear warring in her expression. You give me water?" she asked in disbelief. "But I have no credits." "No trade goods?" "They took, You don't need to pay me," Jake said firmly. "Water isn't something you should have to beg for. It's a basic right." The concept seemed to confuse her even more. On most frontier worlds, resources were scarce and nothing came free. The idea that someone would share their water without expecting payment in return was almost incomprehensible. Jake kept the bottle extended toward her, but she still hesitated. He realized that her fear ran deeper than simple distrust. She had been conditioned to expect cruelty from the human settlers. "My name is Jake," he said, settling more comfortably on the ground beside her. "What's yours?" "Zara," she whispered. "Nice to meet you, Zara. How long has it been since you've had clean water?" She held up 3 trembling fingers. 3 days. Jake's jaw tightened. No wonder she looked so fragile. The Aquari needed more water than humans to survive. Their entire biology was built around moisture processing. 3 days without adequate hydration could have killed her. "Okay, Zara, I'm going to help you, but I need you to trust me." "Can you do that?" She stared at him for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of deception. What she found instead was something she hadn't seen in months of living in the settlement: genuine kindness. Slowly, carefully, she reached out and took the water bottle from his hands. The first sip was hesitant, as if she expected him to snatch it away at any moment. When he made no move to stop her, she drank more deeply, her body's desperate need taking over. Jake watched her drink and felt anger burning in his chest. Not at her, but at the community that had allowed this to happen. At his own brother, who had participated in this cruelty. At himself for not noticing sooner. "When did you last eat?" he asked when she had finished half the bottle. Zara's silence was answer enough. Jake stood up and extended his hand to her. "Come on, let's get you some real food and water. And somewhere safe to rest." But Zara shook her head, terror flashing across her features. No, I cannot. If they see me with you, they will be angry. They will hurt you too. Let me worry about them," Jake said with a confidence that surprised even him. "Right now, I'm more concerned about keeping you alive." He helped her to her feet, noting how light she felt, like a bird with hollow bones. The settlement's main street was mostly empty at this time of day, with most adults at work and the children in school. It was the perfect time to move without attracting attention. As they walked toward his workshop, Jake's mind raced with questions. How had Zara ended up here? Where was her family? What kind of life had she been living in the shadows of New Meridian? "Zara," he said as they reached his door. "How long have you been here?" "In the settlement?" 2 moons, she replied, using the Aquari measurement of time. "About 3 Earth months." "And you've been on your own this whole time?" She nodded, then seemed to realize she should explain. "My family, they brought me here for trade negotiations. But there was sickness on our ship. They had to leave quickly. They said they would return, but..." She gestured helplessly. Jake felt his heart break a little more. She was stranded, alone, on a world that was slowly killing her. And instead of helping, the human settlers had turned her desperation into entertainment. "Well," he said, opening the door to his workshop, "you're not alone anymore." The workshop was cluttered but clean, filled with the organized chaos of someone who understood complex machinery. Zara stepped inside cautiously, her eyes wide as she took in the various devices and components scattered across workbenches. Jake led her to a small area in the back where he had set up a basic living space: a cot, a small table, and most importantly, a water filtration unit that he had built from scratch. "This is my backup water supply," he explained. Jake's small kitchen area contained little more than protein bars and recycled nutrients, but he managed to prepare something resembling a meal. As Zara ate slowly, savoring each bite as if it might be her last, Jake found himself studying her more carefully. Her bone structure was delicate but elegant, and despite her current condition, he could see hints of the advanced civilization she came from. Her clothing, though worn and dirty now, showed intricate patterns that seemed to shift slightly in the light. Even the way she held her eating utensil spoke of refined manners and education. "Tell me about your people," Jake said, settling into a chair across from her. "The Aquari." Zara paused in her eating, considering how much to share. Trust was still a fragile thing, but this human had shown her more kindness in 1 hour than she had received in 3 months. "We are water shapers," she began hesitantly. "Not just users of water, but creators. We can find it where others see only emptiness, purify it where others see only poison, multiply it where others see only scarcity." Jake leaned forward, intrigued. "That device they took from you, it was water purification technology?" "Very small one," Zara confirmed. "Personal use only. But yes, can clean many gallons from very dirty source." Her expression darkened. "Was gift from my mother when I reached adult status. Now is gone? What would a larger version do?" Zara's eyes lit up despite her exhaustion. This was clearly a subject she was passionate about. Large purifiers can process water from any source, even atmospheric moisture from desert air. Can create underground streams where none exist. My people, we bring life to dead worlds through water. Jake sat back, his engineering mind racing. "Zara, do you know how to build these purifiers? The larger ones?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, but requires special materials. Crystal matrices that must be grown in specific conditions. Power sources that your technology cannot provide. What if I told you that this settlement is slowly dying because we can't access enough clean water?" Jake asked carefully. "The aquifers are dropping, the recycling systems are failing, and Marcus's father controls the only reliable purification plant. People are already starting to leave." Zara set down her eating utensil and looked at him with new understanding. "You think I can help? I think you might be the answer to everyone's problems. But first we need to get you healthy and safe." A sudden banging on the workshop door interrupted their conversation. Jake motioned for Zara to stay hidden while he went to answer it. Through the reinforced glass he could see Marcus Chun's angry face, flanked by his usual gang. "Open up, Morrison!" Marcus shouted. "We know you've got the alien in there." Jake opened the door just wide enough to step outside, blocking their view of the interior. "What do you want, Marcus?" "That fish girl stole something from us," Marcus snarled. "She owes us for water we gave her credit for." "You gave her water?" Jake's voice was dangerously quiet. "Because from what I saw, you were making her beg while you held it out of reach." "She's not human," Sarah chimed in. "She doesn't deserve our resources." Jake looked at each of their faces in turn, memorizing the casual cruelty he found there. "Get off my property, now, and if I catch any of you harassing her again, I'll report it to Colonial Administration." Marcus laughed. "My father has more influence with the administration than you do, Morrison. They don't care about one alien's problems." "We'll see about that," Jake replied calmly, then stepped back inside and locked the door. When he returned to the kitchen area, he found Zara standing by the window, her face pale with fear. They will not stop, she whispered. They will make trouble for you because you helped me. Let me worry about them, Jake said firmly. Right now, I want to focus on getting you better. Then we can figure out a long-term solution. Over the next several hours, Jake watched Zara slowly come back to life. Color returned to her skin, her breathing became stronger, and her movements lost their desperate, fragile quality. As her condition improved, so did her ability to communicate in standard. Your language is difficult, she admitted when Jake commented on her improvement. My people, we use harmonic patterns and water scent markers as much as words. Standard feels ... dry. Show me, Jake said. Curious. Zara looked around the workshop and spotted a bowl of water Jake used for cleaning components. She dipped her fingers into it and began moving them in complex patterns. The water responded, forming spirals and loops that shouldn't have been possible with simple finger movements. As she worked, she hummed softly, and Jake could swear he smelled something like rain and growing plants. That was thank you for your kindness, she explained when the water settled back to normal. Jake stared at the bowl, his engineer's mind trying to process what he had just witnessed. How did you do that? Water remembers, Zara said simply. We just remind it of what it wants to do. Could you teach me? The question surprised her. You would want to learn aquari ways? I'd like to understand better. Maybe if more humans understood your people, there would be less fear. Zara considered this, then reached for the water bowl again. This time, she guided Jake's hand into the water alongside hers. Her fingers were webbed, he noticed, with a delicate membrane that seemed to help her manipulate the liquid. Feel the water's current, she instructed. Not just the physical movement, but the intention behind it. Jake tried to focus, but all he felt was cool water and Zara's surprisingly strong grip. Still, he tried to follow her movements and gradually began to sense something, a rhythm, a pattern that seemed to exist just below his normal perception. You have potential, Zara said after several minutes. Your mind is flexible, like good engineers should be. A new banging on the door interrupted their lesson. This time, when Jake looked through the window, he saw a Colonial Administration uniform. His heart sank as he recognized Officer Reynolds, Marcus's uncle. Jake Morrison, Reynolds called when Jake opened the door. I need to inspect your premises for unauthorized aliens. Do you have a warrant? Jake asked. Don't need one for public health inspections, Reynolds replied with a smirk. Reports of an unregistered alien carrying unknown pathogens. Jake knew this was harassment, but he also knew that Reynolds had the legal authority to search his workshop. Fine, he said, stepping aside. But I want it on record that this is targeted intimidation. Reynolds pushed past him and began searching the workshop area. Jake had quickly hidden Zara in the storage compartment beneath his main workbench. But he wasn't sure how long she could stay concealed. As Reynolds searched. He knocked over tools and scattered components, clearly trying to cause as much disruption as possible. When he reached the kitchen area, he picked up the water bowl that Zara had used for her demonstration. Interesting, he muttered, sniffing at the bowl. This water smells ... different. Jake held his breath as Reynolds examined the bowl more carefully. If he noticed anything unusual about the water patterns, it could expose Zara's hiding place. Then Reynolds made a mistake. He turned his back to the workbench where Zara was hidden and began examining Jake's filtration system. In that moment of inattention, Jake saw a thin stream of water rise from the bowl and move across the room like a living thing. It slipped under the workbench and presumably reached Zara, providing her with moisture to help her stay hidden. Reynolds turned back just as the water settled into normalcy. This filtration system, he said suspiciously. It's not standard colonial equipment. I built it myself, Jake replied truthfully. Colonial Administration approved the design 2 years ago. Reynolds seemed disappointed that he couldn't find any violations there. He continued his search for another 20 minutes before finally giving up. I'll be back, he warned as he headed for the door. If you're harboring an unregistered alien, Morrison, you'll face serious consequences. After Reynolds left, Jake waited a full 10 minutes before releasing Zara from her hiding place. She emerged pale but unharmed, and the first thing she did was return the borrowed water to its bowl with a graceful gesture. "Thank you," Jake said, understanding that she had somehow helped during the search. "You protected me," Zara replied simply. "I protect you in return?" As evening approached, Jake realized they needed a better long-term plan. Zara couldn't hide in his workshop forever, and the harassment would only increase once word spread about Reynolds' failed search. "Zara," he said as they shared a simple dinner, "you mentioned that your people can create water sources where none exist. How large of an operation are we talking about?" "With proper equipment and materials could provide water for 1,000 families," she replied. "Maybe more, depending on local conditions." Jake's mind raced with possibilities. "What if we could prove to the settlement that you're not a burden, but an asset? What if we could show them that your knowledge could solve everyone's water problems?" "They would not believe," Zara said sadly. "They see only alien. Not engineer, not person who can help?" "Then we'll have to show them," Jake said with growing determination. "We'll build something that proves your worth beyond any doubt." He pulled out his tablet and began sketching designs. "I can provide the power systems and structural components. You provide the water-shaping knowledge. Together, we build a purification system that makes Marcus's father's plant look like a child's toy." Zara studied his rough sketches, her expression growing more animated as 3 weeks later, the abandoned mining tunnel had been transformed into something that would have impressed engineers from a dozen worlds. Jake's human technology merged seamlessly with Aquari water-shaping principles, creating a purification system unlike anything the galaxy had seen before. Zara stood before a crystalline structure that pulsed with soft blue light, her hands moving in intricate patterns as she guided streams of contaminated water through living geometries. The crystal matrices hadn't been grown, they had been sung into existence, using harmonic frequencies that Jake was only beginning to understand. "The resonance cascade is stable," Jake reported from his monitoring station, watching readouts that tracked pressure, flow rate, and purity levels. "Output is running at 400% above projected capacity." What they had built defied conventional understanding of water treatment. Instead of filtering out contaminants, the system convinced the water itself to shed its impurities, releasing them harmlessly into collection chambers while the clean water flowed onward. The process required almost no energy beyond the initial harmonic activation. "Your people's calculations were perfect," Zara said, a note of wonder in her voice. "The power coupling system allows me to shape water at volumes my ancestors could only dream of." Jake smiled as he watched her work. Over the past weeks, she had transformed from a desperate refugee into the brilliant engineer she truly was. Her confidence had returned along with her health, and he found himself learning as much from her as she did from him. But their secret project was about to become very public the morning of the demonstration. Jake woke before dawn to find Zara already at work, fine-tuning the harmonic resonators for the day's test. She had grown crystal formations throughout the tunnel network, creating a distribution system that could theoretically supply the entire settlement. "Nervous?" Jake asked, offering her a cup of the special tea she had taught him to brew from local plants. "Terrified," Zara admitted, accepting the warm drink gratefully. "If this fails, if they reject what we have built, ... She didn't finish the sentence, but Jake understood. Failure would mean exile or worse for both of them. "It won't fail," Jake said with quiet conviction. "The math is solid, the engineering is sound, and we've tested every component. Today, they're going to see what cooperation can accomplish." At precisely 9 in the morning, Jake's carefully selected audience began arriving at the tunnel entrance. He had invited Settlement Administrator Chun, Colonial Engineer Patricia Voss, Water Authority Director William Morrison, his own father, and most importantly, Dr. Sarah Kim from the Xenobiology Department. Each person represented a different aspect of the settlement's power structure. Marcus had also somehow learned about the gathering and arrived with his usual gang, plus Officer Reynolds and several other adults who shared their anti-alien sentiments. Jake had expected this. In fact, he had counted on it. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jake began as the group gathered in the main chamber, 3 months ago, this settlement was facing a water crisis. Our aquifers are depleting, our recycling systems are failing, and our population is declining as families leave to find more sustainable communities. Administrator Chun nodded grimly. The water situation had kept him awake for many nights. Today, Jake continued, I want to show you a solution that could not only solve our immediate problems, but turn New Meridian into the most water-rich settlement in this sector. He gestured to Zara, who stepped forward despite the hostile stares from Marcus's group. In the weeks of preparation, she had grown stronger and more confident, but Jake could still see the tension in her shoulders. This is Zara of the Aquari, Jake announced. She is a master water engineer whose people have brought life to barren worlds across 3 star systems. She has agreed to share her knowledge with us. This is ridiculous, Marcus's father interrupted. You expect us to trust our water supply to an alien? I expect you to judge based on results, Jake replied calmly. Zara, would you please demonstrate the basic principles? Zara moved to a small demonstration pool they had prepared. The water in it was deliberately contaminated with industrial runoff agricultural chemicals, and bacterial cultures essentially a concentrated sample of everything that made the settlement's water sources dangerous. She placed her hands just above the water surface and began to hum softly. The sound seemed to come from somewhere deeper than her throat, a harmonic vibration that made everyone present feel strangely peaceful. As she hummed, the water began to move in impossible spirals, forming geometric patterns that pulsed with the rhythm of her song. Slowly, the murky water began to clear. Sediments settled out, chemical pollutants precipitated into harmless crystals, and bacterial colonies simply dissolved away. Within 5 minutes, the pool contained water so pure it was almost luminescent. Dr. Kim immediately stepped forward with testing equipment, taking samples for analysis. The readings she got made her pause and test again. This is impossible, she murmured. The contamination levels have dropped to 0 across all categories. The water is actually purer than our best recycled supply. That was a small-scale demonstration, Jake said. Now let me show you what we can accomplish when human engineering combines with aquari water shaping. He led the group deeper into the tunnel system, where the full purification array waited. The crystalline structures cast rainbow patterns on the stone walls, and the harmonic resonators filled the air with a sound like distant singing. This system, Jake explained as they walked, can process 10,000 gallons per hour from any water source: groundwater, atmospheric moisture, even sewage. The output is clean enough to drink without any further treatment. They reached the main chamber where the largest crystal formation pulsed with steady light. Zara took her position at the control center, which looked more like an organic growth than any human technology. The source water for today's test, Jake announced, comes from the contaminated drainage pond behind Morrison Industrial. It contains heavy metals, organic pollutants, and chemical waste that our current systems can't handle. He activated the intake pumps, and murky, foul-smelling water began flowing into the crystal arrays. Zara began her harmonic shaping, and immediately the water began to transform. What emerged from the output channels was crystal clear and odorless. Dr. Kim ran comprehensive tests while the system operated at full capacity. The results left her speechless. 0 contaminants, she reported to the group. 0 bacteria, 0 chemical pollutants, 0 heavy metals. This water exceeds colonial health standards by a factor of 10. Administrator Chun stepped forward, his expression thoughtful. What would it take to scale this up for the entire settlement? 2 weeks for construction, Jake replied promptly. We already have most of the materials. The main requirement is a protected space where Zara can grow the larger crystal formations without interference. And the operating costs? Minimal power requirements, Zara answered, her confidence growing as she saw the positive reactions. System mostly self-sustaining once established. Only need periodic maintenance and harmonic recalibration. The implications were staggering. Unlimited clean water would transform New Meridian from a struggling frontier outpost into a thriving hub. Property values would soar, new businesses would move in, and families would stay instead of emigrating, but Marcus wasn't finished causing trouble. "This is all very impressive," he sneered. "But how do we know the alien won't just shut down the system whenever she feels like it? How do we know this isn't some kind of trap?" Before Jake could respond, Zara stepped forward and did something unexpected. She walked to Marcus and extended her hand. "You are afraid," she said simply. "I understand. Fear makes us protect what we love, even when protection becomes harm." Marcus stared at her outstretched hand suspiciously. "What are you doing?" "Showing trust," Zara replied. "Will you touch the water with me?" She gestured to a small pool fed by the purification system. "If I wished harm, this would be perfect opportunity. But I do not wish harm. I wish to share a gift my people have been given." Slowly, reluctantly, Marcus placed his hand in the pool alongside hers. The water began to glow softly, and Marcus gasped as he felt something he couldn't identify, a sense of connection, of belonging, of being part of something larger than himself. "Water remembers," Zara said softly. "It remembers every place it has been, every life it has touched. Through water we are all connected, aquarii, human, all living things." When Marcus pulled his hand back, his expression had changed. The anger and fear were still there, but they were tempered now by something else. Understanding. Double quotes. He began, then stopped, struggling with emotions he couldn't name. His father pushed forward angrily. "Don't let her alien tricks fool you. This is psychological manipulation." But Administrator Chun had heard enough. "Mr. Chun," he said formally, "I'm authorizing emergency construction permits for the expanded system. Miss Zara, would you be willing to accept a formal position as Chief Water Engineer for New Meridian?" Zara looked at Jake, who nodded encouragingly. "I accept," she said. "With gratitude." The crowd began to disperse, most of them talking excitedly about the implications of unlimited clean water. But Jake noticed that Marcus lingered behind, staring at his hand as if he could still feel the connection to the water.